The government shutdown ended exactly 1 month ago today, with Senate Republicans vowing to Democrats that they would hold a vote in the coming weeks to address the expected spike in healthcare premiums after the ACA subsidies were done away with earlier this year.
Yesterday, 2 votes were held and both failed. Here's what happened. The Democrats proposed what they called a clean 3-year extension to the ACA tax credits and what Republicans called a non-starter. Here's Senate Majority Leader John Thune.
Apparently, they think that a 3-year extension with no reforms to try and disguise the real impact of Obamacare's spiraling costs is actually a plan. I don't know how you can call it a plan. It's not going to do anything to address the perverse incentives that encourage insurance companies to enrich themselves at taxpayer expense. It can do nothing to address the rampant waste, fraud, and abuse in Obamacare. And most of all, Mr. President, it will do nothing to bring down health care costs.
Then Republicans put forth their own proposal. That one would have set up health savings accounts for people who buy their insurance on the ACA marketplace, and that would be done to help customers pay the new higher costs. Those HSAs would have been funded by the same money that was previously being used for the enhanced premium tax credits. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer slammed the bill ahead of that vote.
They used Scotch tape and glue to come up with this ridiculous proposal that can't be taken seriously and does nothing to avoid the impending health care crisis. Even calling this Republican bill a proposal is generous, because the Republican bill is little more than junk insurance. It is no real plan at all. It's been repudiated time and time again in the past, and will be repudiated by the American people again.
The bill needed 60 votes to pass the Senate, and it only received 48, with every Democrat and Republican Rand Paul voting no on the bill.
After both bills failed, Democratic Senator John Fetterman called out both sides for putting forward unpassable plans. Take a listen.
Both of these bills were designed to fail, and I don't think it's really productive to have votes that are guaranteed to fail. Right now, things are designed to fail. That doesn't help anybody, and it's just more than a bunch of empty political posturing. I'm here to vote for real relief.
I'm mildly alarmed because you've got your notes out, Amber. You're a formidable enough debater without notes.
No, these are just little keywords to remind myself what I want to talk about. I don't think we're actually going to argue about this.
Good enough. Well, what do you want to talk about?
Well, I mean, I actually totally agree with John Fetterman.
Right.
I kind of love him now. What the heck is going on?
We've flipped on Fetterman, but that's a whole other thing. Yes.
But look, the reality is, the Obamacare subsidies, for a lot of people, you're getting a benefit of up to $700 a month in reduced premiums. The Republican plan with the HSA accounts was giving, $1,200 a year in an HSA? Like, that's not even comparable. So the idea that they thought that this was going to be, the solution to people's healthcare premiums suddenly spiking is crazy. It was obviously never going to pass, 1. And 2, it doesn't even make a dent in the rise in premiums that people are going to experience. I also find really interesting, and I want to get your take on this too, the Republicans and Trump have really changed their messaging on healthcare. They've stopped talking about privatization. They instead are really making the insurance companies the enemy, which is a populist talking point that both the left and the populist right have been using. But now it's become mainstream in the Republican Party. To hear Majority Leader John Thune place the blame on insurance companies, that would have never happened in the Tea Party era, even maybe 5 years ago. And they are just directly ripping that messaging from the outer flanks of each party.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that is really interesting, and I see it as responsive to where the public are, by and large. I mean, people, of course, have overall differing ideological perspectives, but I think frustration or resentment with health insurance companies and the industry there is very widespread. And the idea that those people within that industry find any possible loophole to make it as hard as possible for them to pay out that would be a problem in any form of insurance or any form of business. But because oftentimes the nature of health insurance is people are in real distress for themselves or for family members, and you've some distant person in some distant office saying, well, if you look at the fine print of, paragraph 73, part B, you'll see that we don't have to cover this. So that, I think, rightly, frankly, breeds anger at insurance companies. But you're absolutely right. It's very notable and a very marked difference to see Republicans, led by Trump in this case, really start to pin the blame on insurance companies. I think that's fascinating to watch.
Yeah, it's a huge change for the Republican Party, and I think a welcome one. Now, we could say it's cynical political messaging, but it is correct to say that a lot of the issues in our healthcare system stem from insurance companies. And one that you didn't mention that I'd also like to say is there's this firewall between the amount that healthcare actually costs and what the consumer pays. And so people don't even really ever see how much, they don't feel really how much people are actually charging, because the insurance company obviously covers, negotiates, et cetera, before that final bill gets to you. And the other thing that I've noticed with the Republican messaging, and don't worry, I'll criticize the Democrats.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. But please, go ahead.
Earlier this week, I was watching Fox Business, and there was a GOP congressman, and I can't recall his name, but he was talking about these competing plans. And he mentioned that they are trying to, quote unquote, fix Obamacare. Not replace, not repeal, fix. Fix Obamacare. They've totally conceded the fight on the Affordable Care Act. Ever since that infamous John McCain thumbs down, Republicans have just totally neglected, rejected the idea of trying to get rid of the ACA. And to me, it seems almost inevitable that we're going to eventually move to a more strongly run government healthcare system, because we're seeing this fight right now with the subsidies. Once you give an entitlement, it's really hard to take it away. Republicans don't want to get rid of the ACA, but they acknowledge that it needs to be fixed. The HSA plan failed. It just seems that's the direction that we're moving. And I would say too, on the HSA plan, HSAs are great. They're fantastic. You get great tax benefits, but it's not a realistic way to, in a large national system, to ease people's burden. Health costs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about the only point of difference we probably have is our overarching view of the ACA. It would, if I was designing a healthcare system, obviously that's not what I would do. I'd just have universal healthcare, as most of the rest of the world does. I think that the ACA worked to expand coverage to a reasonable degree and was criticised at the time for being too left-wing, and there was Sarah Palin and the death panels and all that kind of jazz. But look, where we agree is, I think that public frustration with the current system is so acute and so widespread. Nobody would really design a system like this if you were designing it from scratch. And ultimately, it will, I believe, end up in more of a single-payer system, because while every system has its downsides, that seems to me obviously the easiest and most simple way of doing it, and it cuts down on the profiteering by insurance companies, making money out of people's distress.
It just seems like right now we have the worst of both worlds. I was on an exchange healthcare program a few years ago when I worked for a British company, and oh my gosh, my premiums were like $1,200 a month, and I'm a young, healthy person with no comorbidities. It was absolutely insane. On the Democrats, the final point, they were the ones that passed these subsidies. No Republicans voted for it. Now they're mad that Republicans are the majority and they don't want to extend the subsidies. It's like, come on, get real.
We shall leave it there. Jasmine Crockett's Senate bid has turned the Democratic primary in Texas upside down. We'll talk about that next. Don't go anywhere.